Welcome to the 700 Club. I'm just back yesterday from 10 days in Israel, and I want to show you some of the contrasts I experienced on that trip, and it couldn't be more vivid. And more vivid now than ever for Christians around the world to just vow, stand with Israel in the middle of this struggle. Here's the first picture. It's my first day there, and I'm trying to get over jet lag, and one of the things you do is you go out and walk in the sun. So here I am near the beach in Tel Aviv on Allenby Street, and I'm witnessing a group of Muslim women buy ice cream and then just eat it peacefully on the street. So here they are in Tel Aviv, enjoying freedom. There's no threat against them, nobody trying to rape them, nobody trying to kill them. And so all this talk that somehow Israel is an apartheid state and that Palestinians aren't safe, there's visual evidence. They're absolutely safe. They're absolutely secure. They're surrounded by Jews in Tel Aviv, not the capital, the major city of Israel. And here they are safe. And what a stark contrast to what I experienced just a few days later. Here we are outside the house of Sivan Elkabet, and she was killed. She's 23 years old. Here is the youth area of her kibbutz. It's Kfar Aza, which is Hebrew for town of Gaza. In this town, they supported Gaza. They were considered liberal, if you will, in Israeli society. They wanted peace with their neighbors. They offered them employment. They advocated for them. They wanted them to enjoy life just as they enjoyed life. But on October 7th, Hamas terrorists invaded that kibbutz, and they killed her. She's 23 years old. Here's outside her house, and you can see the sign that her parents put up. Her father called her Savani. That was her nickname. And this is the devastation of her house. And let's go inside, because here's the room where she was killed. They've taken away part of the couch that she was killed in because too much of her blood was on it. You can still see the marks on the wall, and those are blood marks. The pock marks are both bullet holes. They're also a fragmentary grenade when the IDF came in, because the terrorists then converted her house. After they killed her, they converted it into a watch station, and from her house, they shot IDF soldiers. Then I had an interview with her brother, Nadav, and here's his picture outside his sister's house. And to hear him talk about the hope, the future that she had, and how it was all taken away, it was heart-wrenching to hear him. And my prayer over him, may her memory be a blessing. May people remember Sivan and the sacrifice of her life. May we never forget. This is going to be hard to watch. This is a video that George Thomas of CBN News took just a month after the attack, and this is Sivan's house. This is the back room where she tried to hide. You can see the blood on the floor there. There's the couch where she was murdered. And again, all the pock marks on the ceiling, the bullet holes everywhere, the absolute devastation. For us as Christians, let us remember her sacrifice. Let's remember what we're fighting for. This is a beautiful woman cut off from life at age 23. Let us never forget, and let us stand firm with Israel, that we stand against an Islamic death cult. There is nothing peaceful about Hamas. They have vowed to do this again and again and again, repeat October 7 over and over and over until Israel is wiped off the map. Let us believe them. Let us not give them any aid, comfort, any funding. UNRWA should stop right now. There should be no more aid going into that organization, because we already know the aid is diverted into Hamas terrorism. The aid is diverted into creating those tunnels. The aid doesn't go to people who are starving. It goes to the fighters. It goes to the terrorists so they can inflict more damage. Here's the fact. They're still firing rockets. For all the calls of ceasefire, Hamas is still firing rockets into Israel. Now, we've got a hot mic moment from our president, President Biden, where he was bragging that he had told Netanyahu there needs to be a come to Jesus moment. Well, my message to President Biden, you need a come to Abraham moment. Abraham had his relatives captured. They were captured, they were taken away as hostages. What did he do? What did Abraham do? He went to war. And in that war, he didn't stop until all the hostages were returned safe. That needs to be our vow for the Israeli people. We will stand with you until all the hostages are released, until Hamas unconditionally surrenders, puts down all their weapons, and Hamas is no more. That needs to be our vow. We need to stand with Israel. Well, in the news, no ceasefire before Ramadan, the holy Islamic month that's going to begin today. Hamas is still holding 130 hostages in Gaza. Julie Stahl reports from Jerusalem on the stalemate and the growing rift between President Biden and Prime Minister Netanyahu.
President Biden said he's worried about violence in Jerusalem without a ceasefire as Israel braces for trouble in Jerusalem, Judea and Samaria, known as the West Bank, and beyond during Ramadan. Muslims gathered for prayer at Aqsa Mosque on the Temple Mount Sunday evening, Israel repeating its pledge that it will allow Muslims from Palestinian areas to pray there. In an interview with MSNBC, President Biden said Netanyahu has a right to pursue Hamas, but must take into account the plight of Gaza's civilians.
But he must pay more attention to the innocent lives being lost as a consequence of the actions taken. He's hurting Israel more than helping Israel. It's contrary to what Israel stands for. And I think it's a big mistake.
Netanyahu responded in an interview with Politico that his policies represent the vast majority of Israelis.
They support the action that we're taking to destroy the remaining terrorist battalions of Hamas. And they also support my position that says that we should resoundingly reject the attempt to ram down our throats a Palestinian state.
The president sent a mixed message to Israel on its plans to attack Hamas in Rafah, Biden calling it a red line, but also said the U.S. will not abandon the Jewish state.
It is a red line, but I'm never going to leave Israel. The defense of Israel is still critical, so there's no red line. I'm going to cut off all weapons so they don't have the Iron Dome to protect them.
In an effort to get more aid to Gaza, the U.S. is working towards construction of a temporary pier. A U.S. ship departed Virginia with equipment needed to build the structure. Meanwhile, in London, a number of people blew shofars to bring attention to the hostages held in Gaza.
The shofar is all about an awakening, and we want to reawaken the world to this horrific plight the hostages have been facing for 155 days.
In Amsterdam, Israel's President Isaac Herzog helped open the Netherlands Holocaust Museum despite pro-Palestinian protests and calls ahead of time to arrest him. 3/4 of Dutch Jews were wiped out in the Holocaust. Meanwhile, a group of survivors of the October 7th Hamas attack filed the first lawsuit against UNRWA USA, a recognized charity raising money for UNRWA. The suit claims the group is responsible for materially supporting terrorism by knowingly and actively using their charity to operate a terrorist financing scheme in violation of federal law. Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
I applaud this action. It's time to take the law and use it against these organizations that are funding terror. UNRWA is absolutely responsible. They had terrorists on their payroll. They had terror tunnels underneath their headquarters. They were diverting humanitarian aid in order to supply Hamas terrorists. These are facts, and it needs to absolutely stop. Any country that is supplying Hamas, and I'll call out Canada, which just said we're going to start our payments again to UNRWA. Any country that is funding Hamas is funding terrorism, and the full force of international law, U.S. law, needs to be brought to bear. Let's do this. Let's stop the madness here. Why in the world would we have a foreign policy where we support a terror group? And we support insurrection, and we support attacks against innocent civilians living on the border of Gaza? Why in the world would we ever do that? And the pressure shouldn't be on Israel. The pressure should be on Hamas and every single country, every single UN agency that is supporting them. The call needs to be Hamas needs to unconditionally surrender. They need to release all the hostages. There's no negotiating this. You have to do it. Hamas has to end. And there should be pressure from every single Middle Eastern country to accomplish this goal. That is the path to peace, the end of terrorism.